Hi, I'm Wei-Chung Wang, and I am an economist by training, but business practitioner by heart.
And I am India Tucker, a designer by trade with a knack for marketing and an entrepreneurial spirit. And this is Crash and Build, the podcast where we talk about crashing old perceptions and building new perspectives in the realms of business, economics, marketing, tech, and more.
Here we introduce you to aha moments that will prompt new ideas. Listen in to stay on pace with our ever-changing world. Welcome to Crash and Build. You know that we created this show that enables us to explore topics related to the cutting edge of technology, business, and entrepreneurship. I am your host, Wei-Chung Wang.
And I am India, your co-host, and I'm excited to be here today to dive into this new topic. So Wei-Chung, what are we crashing and what are we building today?
It is an excellent question, India. Today, we're crashing misconception about unemployment in the tech industry and building strategies for career success in the artificial intelligence area. I know that this is a super hot topic. A lot of people ask me questions about it. So, we've kind of decided to put an episode together to explore, things, ins and outs of how to get a job and how the job market has become in the modern era.
Yeah, it seems especially in the world of tech recently, well, not even recently, I suppose for the last year now, we hear a lot about layoffs and cuts in employment. So yeah, I'm excited to find out what's really going on here. Is it as bad as it seems, or I'm interested to know the ins and outs of this.
Yeah, I wanted to focus on the job market aspect of things. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons why technology industry has been conducting rounds and rounds of layoffs in recent years, but it is really a complex situation, India. But I think
Mm.
it'll be good if we start by understanding how unemployment is measured. So the Bureau of
Mhm.
Labor Statistics in the federal government actually defines unemployment as people who are jobless, actively seeking work, and available to take a job. So there is actually a very specific definition for unemployment.
Mm. So what does when we're talking about the unemployment rate, what does the unemployment rate really have to do with this? And does it tell the whole story?
So it does and it does not, because I think there is a lot of variances that exist in different industries. So, for example, like in the tech industry, it moves very fast. I mean, we are in the tech industry, and I think a lot of people are who are tuning in are also in the tech industry. And so I think I want to kind of provide a little bit more insight with respect to what's going on in the technology industry when it comes to job market and unemployment, because somebody might be unemployed for a week while transitioning between jobs, especially in the tech industry, because of the fact that technology industry moves so fast. And plus,
Mm.
many tech workers are actually contractors or gig
Mm.
workers, which complicates the picture even further.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess that does make sense. I know there are a lot of contract workers in tech. Um, so when we're going back, I guess, to the unemployment rate, does that unemployment rate account for those workers, those contract workers, or how does that factor in um, different types of people who may be laid off or may say that they don't have a job right now?
Excellent question. So there is, so if you are a contractor or if you lose your main job, but you still are a Uber driver or DoorDasher, in the survey, you are being represented as employed, right? So
Mm.
underemployment is not being captured. Underemployment means that you are not working to your full capacity. You're not making a full salary, but you're still employed, right? So based on the definition of unemployment by Bureau of Labor Statistics, you are still employed. So again, I mean, you could kind of see already like the intricacy in the definitions and how we measure unemployment, and we use unemployment to really tell the whole story, so that we could determine whether or not the economy is growing, right? So being able
Mm.
to understand the shortfalls in the definition of unemployment is of great importance. But the
Mhm.
problem is, I think, like I said, I mean, underemployment is not being counted or at least talk about. But I think for us to understand the picture further, before we even talk about the technology industry, we need to really understand the different types of unemployment and how they apply to technology. So
Mm.
in the definition, we actually have three different major types of unemployment. One is called cyclical, the other is called structural, and then there is frictional unemployment. So the cyclical unemployment, let me, be very straight with you. We don't like cyclical unemployment because cyclical unemployment was basically generated by economic downturns. And everybody right now is trying to avoid that economic recession, because when economic recession hits, you're going to have a lot of turnovers in jobs. Not necessarily because that the workers are not up to par, but because that the general economic climate is bad and people start laying people off, right? So we want to avoid that.
Mhm.
And then the other two unemployments, one is structural. So structural unemployment takes place when there is a persistent mismatch between the skills possessed by workers and the skills that the companies are looking for. And that may not
Mhm.
be a too bad of a thing, because if your skills are outdated, I mean, we should have opportunities for you to improve upon yourselves, and then maybe you could contribute yourself to the next round of economic growth. So structural unemployment happens because of technological advancement. And a lot of people are worried about, for example, whether or not artificial intelligence is going to bring about another wave of this
Mm.
technological advancement that causes the shuffle of job market, right? So that's structural. And finally,
Mhm.
it's frictional. Frictional unemployment depicts a picture when, I mean, as an individual, you go on a job market, you receive the first offer, you hesitate. You probably want to take the time to find the best match, and because you're
Mhm.
assuming maybe the next offer would be better in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, right? So you would be waiting it out, right? As you're waiting that frictional time, that frictional period, you're still unemployed. And but to the
Right.
economy, that may be a good thing. To the company, that may be a good thing, because the company too is trying to find the best match. So if you just randomly
Right.
take a job that comes your way without thinking too much, and maybe 3, 4, 5 months later you have to jump into the job market again to do this all over again, that's a waste of resources and time, and quite honestly, not only for you but also for the company.
This is super interesting because every time you hear about the unemployment rate, it's always, I mean, it's always portrayed as a very bad thing. It
Yeah,
might be the top rate that we use, especially now in the US with an election. They look back throughout the years and they say, oh, but with this president, the unemployment rate was like 4%. This was like 0.3% higher unemployment than this president. So it seems like it actually might not matter as much as we think it matters, especially if it's like point 0.2%
yeah.
or 0.03% of an increase.
Yeah, so as an economist, I could tell you, let me put things in perspective with you, right? So I'm
Mhm.
time stamping it in the third quarter of 2024. The U.S.
Mhm.
unemployment rate was hovering around 4.3%. That's really, really low, right?
Mhm.
So I think in scholarly work, if you check any unemployment rate between 4 to 5%, that's extremely low. That's a good thing.
Understood.
And quite honestly, you're not going to be able to find anywhere in the world where the unemployment rate is zero. So there's got to be some structural and frictional unemployment if the economy is healthy. So looking at
Mhm.
4.3%, that's extremely low. And even if you do like international comparisons, US has had pretty low unemployment rate for quite some time. And I think
Mhm.
the economy bounced pretty well back from when we had the pandemic, right? So the
Mhm.
pandemic, it was holistic. Everybody experienced the hit. Not only just the United States, but if you look at the U.S. unemployment rate right now, I would argue that the U.S. labor market is pretty strong.
Good. Okay. And when you talk about, I know there are specific countries that we always hear about. I think it's Spain, or it's either Spain or Italy
Yeah,
that has a very high um, unemployment rate, like 8%, 10%, around that.
right,
D-
right, right.
does this? Now, does that mean that their economy is in a bad place?
Right. So that's a very interesting question that you mentioned. Like I always want to do like a pure econ podcast because of my specialty and academic training in the field. Like
Mhm.
I will not bore the audience that is not interested in knowing the institutional reasons behind the unemployment rates across countries, but I'll make it very short and concise for you, so that next time when you talk about unemployment unemployment rates with people, you have that number in the back of your head. So,
Mhm.
or the information in the back of your head. So European countries have very strong unions,
Ah, I
and that
see. Okay.
institution, right? So that institution actually caused the unemployment rate to be high because companies are usually hesitant to go out there and hire people, knowing
Mm,
that after they
understood.
hire you, it's really difficult for them to get rid of you.
I see.
Meanwhile, in the United States, the employer employee relationship is established as at will. So
Mm,
you don't even by law you don't even have to give your employees a 2 week notice. Or if your employee wanted to leave you, by law they're not required to give you any notice.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
you're right. I don't want to bore anybody too much either. I was just curious. Um, but when going back to going back to unemployment and tech. So I know that the most recent recession was during the pandemic a couple years ago. Um, I know that unemployment was high during that time, but it seemed like jobs in tech were able to rebound very quickly. So why is that compared to other industries?
Right. So it's certainly very interesting. So I must mention that recently, like I said in the beginning of the episode, we've seen a lot of technology companies start laying people off. Right.
Hmm.
But the jobs created by technology industry, the number is still high up there, which means the turnover is tremendous. Right. So some companies, tech companies, start laying people off, and there are other companies that are hiring. Right. So with the latest AI trend, everybody is talking about AI in the tech industry, and everybody's trying to
Hmm.
create divisions or business units that focus on AI, and they hire data scientists, engineers, and whatnot. Right. So
Hmm.
really, the pandemic accelerated digital transformation for many businesses. So all of a sudden, there was an increased demand for technologies like cloud computing, e-commerce platforms, and video conferencing tools, for example. And
Hmm.
that actually created new job opportunities, even as other industries were struggling.
Mm, gotcha. That makes sense. Um, is has it always been this way with technology specifically? Like in the past, if you look to like the depression or the 2008 recession, was it the same? Have jobs in technology always kind of bounced back?
I will say, I think, especially in the tech industry, this wave feels particularly different. Uh,
Mm,
Um, I recently hosted a career workshop, and somebody actually asked very similar questions. And my example is this, and you always use this example. Like back in the days when ATM machine was first created, all the bank tellers lost
mhm.
their jobs, right?
Right.
But the ATM machine, though fancy, the first iteration of ATM machine actually covered majority of the fundamental needs of dispersing cash, handling
Mhm.
customer inquiries, so you could know what your remaining balance of your account is in a instantaneously, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
ATM version 1 and ATM version 2, they don't come out like right away, right? So ATM, it took probably ATM version 2, I don't know, a year or 2 years to come out,
Mhm.
and maybe ATM version 2 fix some like the fundamental issues of ATM version 1, but ATM version 1 still did a good job, right? So the
Mhm.
pace of iteration of technology was longer back then, and I think that's applicable to all technology that we were seeing before artificial intelligence. But
I
artificial
see.
intelligence created a wave that really shocked everybody. Because take a look at ChatGPT, like how many versions and iterations that we've had in the past 6 months, right? You have
Mm,
ChatGPT 1, 2, 3, 4, right? All happened in the past 6 months. So that kind of scared people. And because of that, the turnover rate becomes more rapid, right?
mm,
And when I say turnover rate, combined with what I just said in the definitions of different types of unemployment, the structural unemployment, the mismatch in skills between
mhm,
workers, because between what workers possess and what the companies are looking for, it happened more quicker than before,
mm.
if you will.
Yes,
Yeah.
that does make sense. Now
So
seeing as
what I think what worries me as well as a lot of people is, you know,
mhm,
yes, I just learned this new skill, but it's going to become outdated very quickly. What do I do? So it's
mhm.
this constant need of being adaptive that really scares people.
Yeah, this is like putting so many questions into my head. I guess the first one I want to ask is we say that like tech jobs in tech are thriving during times like recessions, but um I mean, we still hear, especially in the news, that so many workers in tech have been laid off, whether it's at like Microsoft, you know what I mean, startups, it doesn't really matter. But these individuals who we thought might be the most protected, like software
Yeah.
engineers, etc., are still losing their jobs sometimes. So, what can we explain this in any way?
Yeah. So again, I mean, the fact that workers are being laid off was because their skills are not required or needed, right, in the new
Mhm,
era, especially in the tech industry. So a company might lay off workers with skills in legacy systems, while they still desperately looking for those with expertise in the new tech like AI, machine learning, or blockchain, right? And this is why we
mhm,
often hear about both layoffs and talent shortages simultaneously in the tech industry. The turnover happens a lot more frequently than before.
mhm.
And I think, we talked about the existing labor force, but I think what's more challenging is the incoming talents, those who just graduated from college, right? They are looking for jobs.
Mhm.
And I heard through the grapevine, um, anecdotally, right? So I also, a lot of young
Mhm.
people would come to me for career advice, especially in the tech industry.
Mhm.
And after the workshop that I recently hosted, there were a couple, youngsters that came to me and say that, I thought when I signed up to major in computer science 4 years ago, I thought my future is set. And then,
Mhm.
it's been, 6 months. I still wasn't able to land anything in the job market. Can you help me explain this? Right? They
Right.
almost felt, I almost felt like I was providing kind of like a therapeutic exercise, right? So I needed to
Aw.
calm them down while offering them words of encouragement, and that is difficult to do
Mhm.
because they feel like they were being betrayed by the market, right? And
Yeah.
I think I have an explanation for this, because all these like basic needs, like basic skills, like even for computer science majors, if the
Mhm.
company wants to hire like a programmer, they don't necessarily have to hire a full-time programmer. They could go participate in the gig economy and find a freelancer, um,
Mhm.
from Fiverr, Upworks, right? And to
Right.
cover those needs. So all of a sudden,
Right.
all these youngsters, they need to compete, like they need to start fighting on day one against those freelancers that have had already built some
4
experiences and
years
portfolio in
to
the job market.
yeah. Mhm. That
and
makes
and I think
sense.
that makes a lot of sense because the companies don't want to invest in people anymore, despite the fact that it's relatively easier for them to let people go here in the United States due to the lack of union structure or labor contracts. But still, they
Mhm.
don't want to go through the trouble because hiring a full time employee, you need to give them benefits and whatnot, right? It's pretty expensive and costly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So So, okay, going back to something that you said that is kind of um, hard to hear is that we will constantly have to adapt. And especially if you are an employee who, or not even an employee, if you are somebody who is in the tech field and that's what your focus is, you are saying that these people have to constantly adapt. This is something new because I think a lot of times throughout our lives before we, hit college age or even when we're in college is that we're told to specialize, pick something and become really, really good at it. But you're saying the opposite. You're saying, okay, you can be good at this, but you must realize that as times change, you might have to change, which means what you're doing is going to have to change as well.
You know, I hope that I'm not creating an impression that I'm going against my academic training, because the academic training in economics that I have always talked
Mhm.
about the merits of specialization, right?
Mm.
But I think the industry and the market landscape has changed so rapidly and significantly in that we need to rethink what specialization really means, right? Going off of
Yes.
what the example that I just gave, right? So if you go on Fiverr as an independent freelancer, what do you need to do? You need to make
Mhm.
yourself like appear professional. You need to make sure that you understand how to develop, how to do business development, how to market yourself, right? While still
Mhm.
focusing on your core skill set, and that might be engineering, that might be coding, right? So
Mhm.
I think the specialization merits are still there. It's just the requirements are higher now. So you
Right.
need to not only be really having the laser focus in really cultivating your core skill set, but at the same time, you need to understand how payment processing works. You need to understand how personal branding works. You need to understand how business development works, right?
Mhm.
So that you could survive. So one
Yeah.
strategy is really to develop kind of like a T-shaped skill set, and this means that having that deep expertise in one area, but also broad knowledge across related fields, right? So, for example, a
Mhm.
software developer must specialize in machine learning, but they
Mhm.
also must understand product management and UX design. And
Mhm.
we're seeing a lot of that, like in reality too, right? So
Mhm.
if you're just an engineer that doesn't care about like user experience, you're probably not going to go very far,
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, it used
right?
to be and the same way with designers, right? The UX designers like myself, we really have to kind of
Right.
understand the back end now too because everything is mixed, everything is interrelated. And you need to be able to communicate your ideas very well to other individuals, which may not have been the case before.
And quite honestly, I think what's interesting is that we're seeing like people with multidisciplinary skill sets, they are more prone to job hop because they
Mm.
because they can, right? So not only did
Mhm.
they have the core expertise in the skill, like in the core skill sets that they so prize, but
Mhm.
along the way, maybe they have done some entrepreneurial business, or maybe they have at one point in their career become a freelancer, so they
Mhm.
understand
Mhm.
how to hold conversations with potential clients. They understand how to convert. They understand how to build like a funnel, right, to solicit
Mhm.
leads. And these people, by the way, they job hop. They switch if in 1 minute they realize that you're not giving them the things that they're looking for, they'll look for other opportunities because they can. They are now versatile enough
Mhm.
to switch. And I think that again, that goes against the conventional wisdom, which I think a lot of companies don't want to hear. That is, the companies when they hire you, they expect loyalty,
Mhm.
because the conventional wisdom always says, I mean, if you talk to your grandparents or your parents, they'll say, just get a job and do it for 30, 40 years and you'll be set. Then you enjoy your golden
Mhm.
requirement. Be loyal to the company. Well, it's no longer
Right.
the case, because how many companies do you count in today's market have had a history of 30, 40, 50 years. No, there aren't that many. So
Hmm.
this means that job hopping is probably often seen is probably more leveraged today than before if one wants to advance your one's career and increase earnings, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, oh man, I thought I had another question for you. Is this what you call a gig economy?
This is a gig economy, right? And
Is
gig
that the term
economy,
that's being thrown around?
right? So gig economy actually emerged with the availability of technology. When I think
Social
about
media.
social media too, right? We have all these different platforms for people to try out. And
Mhm.
especially, I live in a state where the cost of living is super high. I've actually had a lot of friends that have to have multiple jobs to just sustain themselves financially,
Right.
right? And so and you might be able to you might be curious enough to ask them like, so what are you like? What is your like professional identity? And I actually I was dumb enough to ask that question and for to some of my friends, and
Mhm.
their answer universally shocked me, right? So they said, I mean, does it really matter? That's their response. Does it really matter what my professional identity is, right?
And what do you say
And
to
and
that?
and I was like, well, it's very curious, right? So it
Oh,
absolutely mattered when we were in school.
do you what could you just for like
Yeah,
for me and for the audience, can you specify what you mean by professional identity? Because I don't think I caught that.
yeah. So who are you? Are you a computer engineer? Are you a marketer? Are you a sales professional? Or are you a UI UX designer? What is your identity, or what are
And is that
your identities?
And is that different from, I know you're going to get into this a little bit more, but the reason I was confused because I think I understood it in the way that you are going to explain by professional identity, by personal branding. Is
Uh huh.
personal branding like your brand, for example, Wei-Chung, that is
Right.
different, I believe, what you're saying than your professional identity or your occupational identity, I
Your
assume.
occupational identity, right? So my granted, I mean, I interact with a group of people that are slightly higher in age, right? So after
Right,
I don't
right.
know mid 30s or mid 40s, and your idea towards your occupational identity and professional identity might be different because at this point in their career, they really don't care that much. But I think
Mhm,
this contradicts uh, directly against what we have learned in the education system. Remember
mhm.
what was the question that people ask you when you were in like kindergarten or grade school? Like, what do you want to become?
Yeah.
Right? Do you?
What do you
Oh,
wanna be when you
I want
grow
to be a
up?
truck driver. Right? Right? I want to be
Mhm.
a police officer. Well, guess what? Things are changing pretty
Yeah.
rapidly because all Uber drivers have had some sort of like other career path. If not,
Mhm.
it, if not concurrently, then definitely something different before.
Mhm.
And at that point, they don't pay too much attention on their professional identity. And I
Mhm.
think that's a wake up call, right? Because in today's world, as we talk about the landscape change in tech industry and how we fare as an individual workers as an individual worker looking for opportunities. How do we survive? We might need to
Mhm.
put aside like this idea of, oh, I just want to beat this, I just want to beat that, because I don't think that's gonna you're not gonna go very far with that kind of
Mm.
perception, if you will.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's changed so much even from just when I was in college. I think when I was in
Yeah.
college, like 4 years ago, everyone still had that mindset of where do you actually want to work for the rest of your life? And even though
Right.
you won't be in the same job for that entire time, you will be in that industry, you will be in that area. But I think that's changed so much in the last 4 years.
Absolutely, and I think that's the scary part. Although I personally am trying to embrace it as much as I can, right? So,
I agree. Yeah,
and
I like it.
right, and but I think there is a harsh reality that everybody must be aware of. You could, it doesn't matter whether you refuse to accept the fact, it's not going to change anything. I mean, the world, the technology world will evolve, and the effect will be will, is that a good word? Permeate, will
Yeah,
permeate
yeah, yeah.
through other industries, right? And I think rather than just sitting here idle, being scared, we really need to figure out what the new rule of the game has become.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's so much more we could get into. I feel like I have to have a whole nother episode on just how social media, I always say this, social media has changed so much. Um,
Uh-huh.
and it has given people so many opportunities, but that's a whole nother episode. What I do want to ask is, so you're saying how we're talking about how the job market has evolved and how society has evolved with technology, but how do you see specifically the tech job market changing within the next 5 to 10 years?
I will absolutely hammer on the needs of being uh, humanistic,
Mm.
because I think the enduring value of human skills in a pure AI driven world will be something that everybody desperately needs. Things like creativity, emotional intelligence, and complex problem solving are still uniquely human. And I often also talk about the cultural competency, right? So we have a lot
Mhm.
of these large language training model, learning model that could
Mhm.
come out with all these different tools that generate outputs and results, but they don't understand the cultural context. And at the end of the day, we still have to like remember we live in a human world, and in this world we are being constantly influenced by institutions, and these institutions include human history, religions, philosophies, languages, and all
Mhm.
these intricacy and implication with, you know, in really every day-to-day communication among people, not just people here in the United States. I'll give you an example. Right now, the
Mhm.
large language learning model focuses on the context of English because we do have the majority of database transcribed or denoted in English. How about other languages? So there are still ways to go, right? We know that, and that's coming. And I'm not saying that a current AI
Mhm.
is inferior. No, no, no. Like I said, the rate of iteration is so rapid compared to before, right? So all these uniquely human skills and humanistic thoughts, we need to cover that. We need to still be humans.
Yeah.
Don't ever try to convert yourself into robots. Keep
So
that. That's
keeping
the
that
value.
humanity.
Yes, yes, yes.
Understood.
Right. Uh, a quick example would be Notebook LM. Right. The
Mm.
Google just released the Notebook LM, which could take in a book or some notes, and they'll create like AI voiced podcast. Right. That
Oh, yes,
sounds
I saw
just like
this.
real humans. But think about like whoever develops that model, right?
Mhm.
He or she needs to they need to consider the context, the language context. So
Right.
there has got to be humanity and humanistic thoughts behind the creation of such product.
And if, say, somebody is listening who works in tech and they think, okay, I don't know how to be humanistic. Maybe they've been I don't know how to be a human. Maybe they've just been very strictly like to the books. Maybe they've
Yeah.
been really set on how can I become a better engineer? How can I be a better designer? How can I really do this and focus? And now when it comes down to it, they're having problems themselves just with their soft skills, I suppose. How would you suppose that individuals could work on that?
I like it. Right. So there are two things that everybody needs to work on. And maybe I can't provide you with a kind of like a direct answer to teach you how to be more humanistic, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, because of that specialization mindset, people are being caught up with,
Hmm.
we're being put in silos, right? And I get it, right? So there are two things that we absolutely need to do. Number one, understanding that being specialized is good, but it's not enough. Discover more interests, right? The first, you absolutely have to do this. The second thing is try to present yourself as a whole package. And I'm not encouraging everybody to be like an Uber driver, but really understand what other platforms that exist that could allow you to do work, compensated work outside of the work that you're currently doing. And use that as an experiment, because if you start exploring, you then realize that you are your own marketer, you are your own development
Hmm.
specialist, you are your own payment processor. That'll
Hmm.
force you to really see the whole picture. So I had a premise, right? So everybody, because of this specialization concept, we're being put in silos. I'm forcing
Right.
you. I'm forcing you to go out of your way to try to be a whole package, right?
Hmm.
So the fact that you need to now look at things that are beyond your specialized skill sets, that gives you an idea of what's going on in the whole world. The fact that I'm
Right.
asking you to go out there and try to get compensated by work that is so
Hmm.
different from the day-to-day work that you're doing for your company, that gives you a sense of how you could characterize yourself in today's market.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
this, I mean, this generation is perfect for me because I've always hated like having like when I got that question growing up, I was one of those people that like I never had a set answer. My answer was always changing, like as I
Uh-huh.
got older at different ages. So I'm happy that like we don't have to define ourselves to one specific
Yeah.
industry, job. You don't have to like one professional identity. We don't have to do
And
that in this day and
don't
age.
don't get me wrong. I'm having difficult time holding conversations with my kids, right? So I'm constantly struggling with like how I'm going to teach them, because the world is ever changing, right? And I don't want to let them
Mhm.
think that, oh, you know what? Feel free to be jack of all trades and master of none, because that also goes
Oh
against
yeah.
what I've been talking about. Because you got to have a core skill set. But I think what I wanted to really focus on is the ability for them to explore, the ability, the willingness for them to
Hmm.
try new things and be more humanistic, because that's really what the value is going to be coming from.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess one more piece of advice I'd ask is for those individuals that have really had that focused mindset, that focused career path, whether they went to school, they got a bachelor's degree, they got a master's degree, and they are in this set profession. Um, how could how could these individuals now learn to diversify their skill sets?
I don't think that I don't think what we are suggesting goes against what they're doing, right? Because the school and education program, whatever, is still trying to cultivate you with that core skill set. I'm not going to be able to tell the pilot, hey, you know what? Stop just focusing on the piloting skill. No, no, no. When I take the airplane, I want to safely arrive, right? but,
Right.
but, but the thing is, outside of that skills, I mean, again, the requirements to prosper in today's job market just become higher, is what I mean. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality. That's the harsh reality, right? You need to treat yourself like a business. This means you need to manage your finances carefully, including setting aside money for taxes and benefits, and you need to continuously market yourself, keep your skills sharp and portfolio updated, and constantly look for other opportunities outside of your field. Right? The
Mm,
requirements just become higher, and people think, oh, you talk about finance now? Well, guess what? It is now a requirement because the retirement system in America is another ticking bomb, right? It used to be like in the 80s, we have annuity program. People don't have to worry about, not having enough to live on after their retirement because they just choose the company to work there for like 30, 40 years. And the company will guarantee you with like a safety net post retirement. That's no longer the case after the introduction of 401k. And by the way, this is worthy of another episode, right?
mm,
So the requirements to
absolutely.
sustain yourself, not only just from the job security perspective, but from your personal finance perspective, just become higher and higher. And after all, I mean, America, we're running market economy, which means that you're responsible for your own safety. The requirements
Absolutely.
just become higher.
So people shouldn't just be relying on their companies as maybe they did or maybe their parents did a long time ago.
Companies will hate me for saying this, but it is
Companies
true.
know this, I think, at the same
Yeah, I think
time.
because I mean, in order for you to get the everlasting loyalty,
Hmm.
you really need to beef up your offer. And I don't think I don't think currently companies could afford
That,
to offer
right.
that, right? Because of this ever changing landscape and you know uh, the increase in the level of competitiveness in whatever
Hmm.
market that we're operating, especially the technology field.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been incredibly informative. I know we're nearing the end of our time, so do you have any key takeaways that you want to leave our listeners with as we wrap up?
Don't do not lose hope. And I think I want to. I'm not. By the way, I'm not backpedaling. I think if you listen carefully with the underlying message that we're trying to deliver, I'm still trying to paint a rosy picture because your future is now in your hand. I mean, before your future was in the company's hand,
Right.
and I like the autonomy. I like the control that I currently have.
Hmm.
Right, and we could get into like more like words of wisdom, but I think for any of us, including myself, I mean, I talked to you about this. I think recording
Hmm.
podcasts is like a therapeutic exercise for me. Sometimes I need to be
Hmm.
reminded with my own words because I'm in it too, right? But I think we're going to be okay, and I don't want to be like cheesy or cliche, but really, the fact that we're thinking about these issues, we're already having a leg up against our competition because a lot of people
Hmm.
are so worried about dealing with their current challenges, and we have the bandwidth to really look at the current landscape from a holistic perspective. That by itself is applaudable, and we need to keep doing that.
I think this was an awesome episode, Wei Chung. Um, I'm looking forward to talking more about all of the other topics we kind of got into in the future.
Yeah, well, you know what? If there's one parting advice, keep crashing those outdated assumptions about careers and try to build new paths to success, is my advice to you. I'll see you next time.
Absolutely. See you next time. Crash and Build is hosted by Wei-Chung Wang and co-hosted and produced by India Tucker. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Crash and Build.